Hello, I'm Sharling and this is Dying Light Enhanced Edition. So the original Dying Light was released in 28th of January 2015, and earlier this year they released the expansion called The Following. Now for those of you who haven't played Dying Light, it is described as a first-person action survival game, and for those of you who've played Dead Island, there are going to be many similarities to be found in Dying Light, with some improvements of course. The Enhanced Edition comes with the vanilla game and the Following expansion, along with a bunch of different DLCs, the Bozak Horde, the Zombie Mode, Cuisine and Cargo Challenge missions, and the Ultimate Survivor Bundle, along with some of the other content updates that have been released for the game up until now. So graphically, Dying Light looks good. I think that Techland has done a great job with the look and feel of the game. There is a lot of detail in the environments that really give the feel of a city that has fallen to the zombie apocalypse. Large numbers of zombie packs are littered throughout the map, and even then the game runs well. I believe there have been some performance optimizations with regard to the game from what I have read. Now the only experience I've had with the vanilla game was on a free weekend, and I was actually unable to run without getting frame drops unless I turned down the view distance, and I haven't had any of those kinds of issues in the Enhanced Edition. So I've basically been able to run with everything fully maxed at 1080p for the most part. There were a few instances in Sector 0 where I noticed a frame drop, and changing of course the view distance seemed to remedy this. However, even with the view distance dropped, there didn't seem to be much of a noticeable difference in visual fidelity. Now I'm running on an i7-920 with SLI GTX 970s. So Dying Light is an open world game with plenty to do, as you would expect with this type of game. You play as Kyle Crane, a GRE operative who's been dropped into the city of Haran that has basically been quarantined due to a virus outbreak, and you've been tasked to find a specific file. So you basically end up meeting with a group of survivors at a place called the Tower and offering your help in hope of getting more information about this file. Needless to say, things take a twist and turn out to be far more complicated than expected. Now, I don't want to talk too much about the specifics of the story since I don't want to spoil anything for those of you who haven't yet played the game, but I will say that all the dialogue in the game is voiced and for the most part pretty decent, and that's including all the side quests as well, with the exception of course with the quests you get off the job board. The maps themselves are pretty large. The main game consists of two areas, the slums and Sector 0. The slums are the larger of the two areas, and you'll spend the majority of your time in the game on that map doing various quests, side quests, and along with a few random encounters as well. And the play area of the Following, the expansion, is about the size of the two original maps combined, so it's actually fairly large, and I'll talk a little bit about the gameplay of the different zones a little bit later in the video. So there's definitely plenty of things here to keep you busy. So you'll come across a variety of different types of zombies in the game, as well as some human enemies, both of which will require a different approach. The normal zombies are pretty easy to deal with for the most part, but can quickly overwhelm you if you're not paying attention, but they are unable to climb. So with your character being a parkour expert, it's pretty easy to outrun and outmaneuver them. There are virals as well, which are kind of infected, similar to the ones in 28 Days I suppose, who scream and run at you, and who can climb and will definitely pose more of a threat, especially in large numbers, along with some tougher mini-boss zombies as well. So the human enemies in the game are a little bit less interesting. They have melee weapons, or in some cases firearms, and they tend to block a hell of a lot, and I found that using a bar on them was a faster way to deal with them. The automatic weapons that some of them have do require a little bit more caution when you're approaching them, of course, since they have a lot of range. And then there are some boss encounters as you progress through the storyline in the game. So the majority of the game you're going to be basically scavenging around the city for crafting components, free running around the city and dismembering zombies and anybody else who crosses your path. Now, if you've played Dead Island, you probably already have a good idea of what the combat in this game is going to entail. You basically aim where you want to strike with your mouse and click to attack. Well-placed shots with bladed weapons will dismember enemies, cutting heads and arms off, or if you're using blunt weapons, it basically cracks them open. There are a variety of different weapons that you can be found in the environment, especially when you first start the game. But as you level up, you'll start finding better weapons, as well as have access to vendors where you can purchase higher quality gear. However, weapons in Dying Light, with the exception of range weapons, all have durability. And so eventually they will break and need to be repaired with metal scraps. And on top of that, they can only be repaired a limited amount of times. So basically, once you've used all the available repairs and the weapon breaks, you'll have to dismantle it for more scrap and find a new one. Also, as weapons degrade in the game, they become less effective, so you'll find yourself carrying around a variety of different weapons as backup. Blueprints for weapons can also be found, which, like in Dead Island, will basically add elemental damage like electricity, poison or fire. And as you progress further into the game, you'll be finding better blueprints with elemental effects that do more damage. These weapons can also be upgraded with upgrades that you find throughout the environment or from vendors and that kind of thing, which basically increase the durability of the weapon, so how long it's going to last, the handling, how fast you can attack, and of course the damage, which is self-explanatory, with the higher quality gear having more slots for more of these upgrades. But outside of the actual weapon modding and upgrading in the game, you will be spending a lot of time crafting secondary weapons and items. So medkits, flares, grenades, lockpicks, and even boosting potions, which will increase your survivability both during the day and during the night. So there's pretty much always something that you're going to want to be crafting. There's a leveling system in the game, and that falls into three categories, 4 if you include the expansion. There is survival, so any XP you get from quests contributes to this. There is agility, so any jumping, climbing, and agility-based skills that you use are going to add to this. And then of course there's power, so basically any combat related activities will add to this particular one, and I'll talk about the fourth one when we get to talking about the expansion itself. So as you level up each of the trees, you'll unlock various skills associated to that tree, and the choices will depend entirely on your gameplay style, but you will eventually unlock all of them if you do play enough. So basically by level 20 in each tree, you will have all but the final skills, which basically require level 24, and in my 46 hours, I still have not reached level 24 yet, so that's going to take some time. So here's the thing. XP gained is doubled at night, which is nice. So you may think, well, why not run around at night? Well, the zombies are tougher at night, but not only that, there is a new type of zombie that appears at night called the Volatile. And he does a lot of damage, climbs as fast as you do, and when you get one's attention, the others will come as well. So it's basically a risk-reward scenario. So playing during the night, especially when you're weaker and in the early game, is more akin to playing like a stealth game, where you'll be sneaking around past these volatiles. In fact, when you look on your minimap at night, the volatiles are marked, and they even have their field of view displayed on your minimap to help you avoid getting spotted. They can be killed, but it's not easy, and like I said in the beginning, especially when you're really weak, it's probably best to just avoid them. The other thing though is if you die during the night or during the day, you lose a bunch of survivor XP. So even though you'll never drop below your current level, successive deaths can set you back a bit progress wise in this tree. Luckily though, the other two trees, which are agility, your power tree and your driving tree, are not affected by this. The other thing is also at night, UV light is your friend. The zombies, and more important, the volatiles, will not enter an area with UV light, so you basically have flares which serve as a temporary safe zone. So if they're chasing you, you drop it down, they won't actually come in after you. You also have a UV torch which you can shine on them to push them back and give you that little bit of extra time as you try to make your way back to one of the safe zones scattered throughout the map. These safe zones are basically located all over the place, but they do need to be cleared of zombies first and have their power turned on before they can actually be used. But once that's done, they serve as a place to pass time where you can also skip to morning or skip to night depending on what you want to do, or as a place to drop off stuff in your personal stash. And you'll also get a bunch of survivor XP for each one of the safe zones that you unlock. So as I mentioned earlier, there are a large number of quests and side quests to do, and for me, going through the main campaign, doing a bunch of different side quests took about 30 odd hours, 35 hours, something like that, in order for me to get to the end. You can always load back in afterwards and finish the side quest that you haven't finished and that kind of thing, so you're always free to go back into the game after you've completed it. So let's talk about the expansion. Story-wise, you find a group of survivors who are not getting infected and don't even have any antigen. So you come to the countryside to try and find out how, and again there's quests to do and side quests like the normal game, but they progress the story in a slightly different way. Basically, in order to find out more about this group called the Faceless who worship the Mother, you need to earn reputation. So by doing each quest, by doing a variety of side activities like destroying nests, basically add to the reputation meter. As that fills, you unlock the next story mission. So at first when I heard about this expansion, I thought, yeah, this seems kind of odd. A large part of the Dying Light experience was the free-running parkour system that they've been speaking so much about, which allowed you to traverse the cityscape like a badass. and it seemed odd to me that they would remove all the buildings and replace them with large open fields and then add a vehicle. But I'll say, after loading into the new map, it wasn't long before I got access to the buggy and was having an absolute ball driving around and over hordes of zombies in my new upgradable toy. And in addition to being able to use all the skills that I'd acquired from my time in the city, there were a whole bunch of new skills to unlock by leveling up my buggy as well. And on top of all that, I think the handling for the vehicle is done really well. It has a lot of weight and it's incredibly satisfying to drive over zombies or into them. And much like the combat in the game, it feels very impactful. As I alluded to before, also the buggy introduces a new skill tree for the buggy itself. So as you drive over zombies and you level up, it's going to unlock new skills, which are going to increase the durability of your buggy. It's going to add basically spikes to the front of your car or electricity damage, the ability to attract zombies to your car, that kind of thing. So that's all pretty cool. There's also a crafting system that's specific to the buggy, so the different parts of your buggy can be upgraded. They come in a variety of different tiers like the weapons do, but also have a limited amount of repairs that can be made. So along with the new screw material which has been introduced to the game, you also have to find fuel and a variety of other new components that are specific to crafting and repairing parts for your buggy. So after spending a fair amount of time upgrading my buggy and driving around, I absolutely love the buggy now and I wish I could take it back with me to Iran City. So the openness of the countryside and the inclusion of driving are probably the biggest changes to the game in the expansion, obviously along with the scenery change. It does create somewhat of a different game flow because the map is so large, you absolutely need to drive around in the buggy in order to get around in a timely manner. There is a town center on the map as well where you will be unable to take your buggy in and that is basically more like the traditional experience you'll find in the vanilla game. There are other locations, barns and sort of farmsteads and things like that, where there's going to be some parkour, and there are of course water pipes running all over the place which you can climb up and run around, but not nearly as much obviously since you're in the countryside as you would find in the city. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are also a number of volatile nests scattered throughout the countryside in caves and underground locations that need to be destroyed as well, and these create an interesting gameplay loop. They can be approached during the day or during the night, but they advise you to approach them at night since most of the volatiles will be roaming around in the countryside and not actually inside the nest, which will make them easier to destroy. Another new addition are watchtowers, which will be found throughout the landscape and basically act as spawn points when you die, but are not actually safe zones. So in the night, for example, if you die near one of these, you'll spawn there, but you'll still be forced to make your way back to a safe zone. You won't just automatically appear back at a safe zone. So there are human enemies obviously as well, although this time more often than not they are armed with assault rifles and require you to approach them a little bit more cautiously. There are some new super zombies as well scattered around the map, which are basically like boss zombies with big fat health bars, and they require you to find specific weak points and that kind of thing in order for you to kill. But otherwise, for the most part, it's basically more Dying Light. And you know, of course, that's always a good thing in my opinion. And along with the release of the expansion, they've also added legendary levels, which basically increased the level cap from 25 to 250. Now these legendary levels function much like Paragon levels in Diablo 3. So each new level doesn't give you new skills or abilities, but they basically give you points, and these points can be put into one of several categories. So you won't get any new skills, as I said, but you'll increase the effectiveness of your general abilities like weapon damage or melee damage or bow damage and things like that. So after making my way through the game and the expansion, here's what I think of it. It's no secret that I'm a big fan of zombie-themed films and games. I loved Dead Island, although it wasn't without its issues, and to me Dying Light feels like a more expanded, polished version of Dead Island, with the addition of parkour. And Dying Light really is one of the most enjoyable open world games I have played in a long time. The combat feels great, very impactful, the controls were intuitive, and it didn't take too long for me to learn how to be a parkour zombie killer badass. The story kept me engaged through my time with the game, as did the enjoyment factor of just running around, scavenging, making cool weapons and racking up kills while being cool. The inclusion of new enemies at night and the increase in difficulty at night was a great change of pace and offered a great sense of reward when you managed to survive. And I think even now, when I'm nearly level 20 in all of my trees, going into the night is still something that I do cautiously. And I think the addition of the countryside and the buggy and the following worked really well, contrary to what I initially thought it would, and definitely adds new aspects to a game that I think was already great. And Techland has done an amazing job, and I'm super excited to see what they plan on adding next. I didn't really get a chance to try out multiplayer since I couldn't find any games at all. And I only played co-op briefly, so I can't really comment on that. But the game is co-opable with 3 other people, so there's a total of 4 of you who can play. And I have no doubt that the more the merrier rule will apply here. I'm looking super forward to playing this co-op with my friends when, well, they eventually pick up the game. So that's been a look at Dying Light Enhanced Edition. If my opinion isn't already evident, this game is good. No wait, this game is great. If you like sandbox games, zombies, badass parkour and combat, you should probably pick this up. There is so much content here in the Enhanced Edition, I think it's hard not to recommend if you enjoy the gameplay loop that is to be found in Dying Light. It's currently $60 on Steam, and if you think the price is too high, then wait for a special. But I would suggest that you don't let this game pass you by. I think it deserves more attention than it did get. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe, like and share this with your friends, as it helps the channel out a lot. I've been Xiaoling. Until next time.